House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is issuing a warning to the 2020 candidates, and Vice President Joe Biden's campaign says they don't need to win Iowa.
We are back with Daria Dawson, Democratic strategist, and Republican strategist Holly Turner. Ladies, Nancy Pelosi is sounding the alarm bells about the party moving too far to the left. Do we actually have the sound, or we just have the article?
No, this is from an article to Bloomberg, of all places, that she had to give it to. Yeah. Anyway, so she says she's not a big fan of Medicare for all. She said the plan would cost too much. I think she said somewhere in the line, as somebody who is an extremely liberal from San Francisco, here is my dire warning to the Democratic Party. What do you make of Pelosi's warning?
I have a whole new level of respect for this woman, right? I mean, she is so smart on this issue, and she knows what she needs to do and what steps need to be taken for the party. Her point in that article, Crystal, I'm serious.
Crystal's gonna have a conniption over here.
No, but listen, here's the point. Disagree with this point. In this article, she says that the values and the policies in San Francisco do not always translate to Michigan, but the values in Michigan always do translate. How is that wrong?
Here's how it's wrong. She specifically talked about the wealth tax being more popular in San Francisco, where there are a whole lot of wealthy Silicon Valley people, than in Michigan. I promise you, if you pull the wealth tax in Michigan, it pulls way better than in wealthy, liberal San Francisco, which is her enclave. I mean, look, Daria, we ran the frickin' centrist last time and we lost. Medicare for all is popular. The Green New Deal is popular. And as much as it makes people uncomfortable, those are the facts and reality. I mean, look, we had head-to-head polling of Michigan this morning in the New York Times. Bernie is the top candidate against Trump in Michigan, +6 against Trump. And let me just throw one more thing into the mix that we should all keep in mind. And this actually, Congressman John Yarmuth, who I talked to over the weekend from Kentucky, pointed this out to me. ACA is Pelosi's legacy. So she's got a personal stake in sort of keeping the ACA model rather than taking that next step towards
But she also wants to keep her speakership. And if she loses House seats, she's not going to do that. Anyway,
she wants to
I'm a big fan of this
power structures the way that it is. That's right, which is why she doesn't like AOC.
Lover or hater, Pelosi is the smartest Democratic strategist that I believe is out there right now. And I think she has a valid point. And I'm going to use the example of my Florida A&M University classmate, Andrew Gillum, winning the primary in Florida, and then trying to make that pivot. You know, being so far left for the primary, he's the most progressive in the primary. And then you have 2 months to make a pivot to get general election voters. It's just not going to work. I think the way that Pelosi is saying this is all politics is local. When she was running her slate of Democrats in 2018, she let those Democrats appeal to the voters that they needed to at home. AOC is not going to appeal to a Max Rosa's district. So we have to basically figure, our messaging could be all over the place, but at the same time, in order for us to win these states, these Michigan, the Midwestern states, in order for us to win the Electoral College, we need to, I'm not necessarily saying we need a centrist, but I'm necessarily saying that we need to just be a little bit more aligned on what the constituents want.
So wrong, though, when they just think about this in terms of ideological lens. Because if you were thinking in terms of, well, who's the most progressive and they're going to have the hardest time winning, then you would think that Sanders and Warren would be in roughly the same place. But they're not. The polls show that Sanders has a much better shot at beating Donald Trump than Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, who is the centrist, have. It's much more about, do people trust you? Do they feel like you're telling them the truth? And with Sanders, and we were talking about this in a little bit in the break, what people like about him is what Nancy Pelosi hates about him, which is that he wants to be an existential threat to the Democratic Party. And most of America has no use for the establishment of the Democratic Party. It's actually as strong. It's why he does so well with independents, because he's willing to call them out.
And that's the thing, Derry, you talked about having a pivot in the general election. That just seems to me a bit of an outmoded day of politics, because there was no Donald Trump general election pivot, right? It was the same message 2015 all the way till he's been in the White House and ever since. And that really is candidate like Bernie Sanders, which is the same thing. He's not going to pivot. And I think that's exactly why a lot of the people support him. And so ultimately, I mean, it really comes down to is you said Nancy Pelosi is the greatest Democratic strategist, but it's like strategist for what, right? Like as the Speaker of the House in order to pass what? I mean, it's about what you're actually not only keeping power, it's about what you're going to do when you actually get into into power. And so
are you saying that as Speaker, she has not done anything?
No. I'm saying she got the ACA, but the criticism of her from the progressive left is, didn't fight for the public option. Now, even as Speaker of the House, I mean, she's the one more than anybody who tried to keep off of impeachment many of the other things that the progressive left had wanted after the 2018 election. And so they're saying, if you're going to have
approach lost us like so many 1,000 state house seats. Governor's mansions. Yeah. She lost the House. We lost the Senate. We lost the presidency, and that was the.
But was that a centrist approach, or was that the backlash of the Affordable Care Act?
I think it was the centrist approach. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot to argue about, but basically, Barack Obama's presidency spent a lot of time trying to get the grand bargain and try to play to the center. He was an accommodationist. He wanted to work with the other side. Clearly, that didn't resonate with the public. I mean, look, my view is people misunderstand what voters, especially in these key swing states, want. There is a lot of room to be an economic populist and be pretty radical, because for a working class person in those people, whether you're rural, whether you're in the cities, wherever you are, life is really tough. And so if you have someone like Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, who I don't like, but they felt seen by, they felt like he was responding to them, and they're willing to toss out the old and in with the new and change things up, they're willing to go with it because life is so challenging for them right now.
What I fear is where we are in this country right now is you have to be either far left or far right, and everybody else in the middle has to pick a side. And I just don't think that is fair for us to basically forget about the process of democracy. That
we got 20 choices on the ballot.
I mean, we do. Well, the number keeps getting lower and lower. And maybe it's just the media or just the punditcies or whatever. But I hate what that is happening to this country. That is what's happening, one side or the other, and choose your side. And that's the direction that we're going. If we're not there already.
Let's all join hands and agree now that Joe Biden's strategy is terrible. Because that's the next topic that we're going to talk about. His campaign manager is telling the Wall Street Journal that they're the only ones who don't have to win Iowa. They've been for a while setting expectations low, not only for Iowa, but also New Hampshire, but also Nevada. And at this point, Daria, there is a non-zero chance that Biden could get fourth in Iowa and fourth in New Hampshire. And then to the point you were making last segment, does his South Carolina firewall hold if he's looking so weak in those early states?
I would say no. I think it's a mistake for them to say that he doesn't need to win Iowa. Maybe they are trying to lower our expectations, but it's not a good look. If he doesn't do well in Iowa, and I would say top two, if not win, then I do think South Carolina, that whole guard of African Americans that you mentioned earlier, are going to have to take pause.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for them to vote for him, right? Which is like his whole thing was he was the electable one. He's the one who could beat Trump. Some of these head-to-heads still show that he might be able to perform. But if you're going to limp through a primary fourth place, third place, second place, why should somebody vote for you after such a showing like that?
But you know who else said this? Yeah. We don't need to win Iowa.
Right.
Jeb Bush.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember that? Do you remember when Jeb Bush
he said that same thing? South Carolina. He's like, I'm all in on South Carolina. I got fifth.
It's just, it's so fun to be on the other side this time. But those later states, even third, fourth state in line, are they going to throw away their vote, or are they going to have their vote actually choose the winner?
It's dynamic.
And if you don't do well in Iowa or New Hampshire, then what's Super Tuesday going to look like?
Yeah. Correct.
That is like right after South Carolina. So. People are going to see, that changed the momentum for the Obama campaign, winning Iowa.
That's right.
So I was there in Nevada when you could just see the folks just be like, Hillary who? And he has to, they cannot say that they don't need to win Iowa.
And not to mention when he doesn't have the war chest.
Right.
And you're weak in the early states and you got no money, are people really going to stick with you?
It's expensive,
I'm skeptical.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
I think he's out before South Carolina even gets here.
Really?
That's a hot take.
Bold prediction.
Really do.
We're going to hold it to you. Next time you're on the show, we're going to roll the tape.
You do that.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on Rising, my conversation with the Senator Bernie Sanders, National Press Secretary Brianna Joy Gray. We sat down at Politicon to talk about the state of the presidential race.
And the Hill correspondent Reed Wilson tells us what happened on the ground in Iowa this weekend. All the candidates were there at a big event. That was pretty cool to see. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss all the interesting stuff that we're putting up all the time. Also, check out our newsletter, rising.substack.com. There's extra good stuff in there. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.